Hi, this is the final lesson of Historical Books 3. The last lesson we learned about King Hezekiah and that he was a good king and he made a lot of reforms in Israel. And today we're going to talk about King Josiah. Now, King Josiah was, after David, probably the best king, had a heart after God, and he corrected everything in Israel from the days of Jeroboam, when Jeroboam set up the two high places, one in Samaria, one in Dan, to replace the temple in Jerusalem, because he was afraid that the northern kingdom would defect and join the southern kingdom again, because as the Lord's commandment was, they had to celebrate the Passover, the Day of Atonement, and all of that in Jerusalem. And yeah, he was afraid that the people would defect, and he set up two high places as a replacement for the temple in Jerusalem. He ordained his own priests and uh, those who were not Levites according to the law of Moses to sacrifice on the altars there. And after that time in Israel, whether in the northern or the southern kingdom, other high places were created. Um, and Israel had this thing where they were serving idols from long before the times of the kings. They were serving the I call it the demon Baal. From Baal was a Canaanite idol, and and the Israelites also worship this idol, even from the days of after Joshua. Um, we read about the first person who tore down these idols and these altars for these idols was Gideon, and that's a that's a long time before where we are right now in the Book of Kings. And so Israel's always had this thing about idolatry, where they would, in a way, cheat on God, if you know what I mean. They would they would forsake the Lord to serve idols. And there were two main idols. One was Baal, and the other one was considered Baal's wife, called Asherah. Asherah was also called Ashtoreth, and Ashtoreth is a fertility god. And so what had happened was, before the days of Josiah, that the Ark of the Covenant was removed from the temple, and they had built the idol of Baal and Asherah in the temple. And when Josiah, uh, when he was king, when he was crowned king, when he was 8 years old, he went through a time where he tore down the images and the high places, and it came to a place where, when he was in his 18th year, that they were doing spring cleaning in the temple. Can you believe it? Spring cleaning in the temple, and there the priest Hilkiah, he found the law, as if it was in some corner, stacked away or stashed away covered in dust. I can just imagine it was just somewhere forgotten. It's like the people forgot that there was the law of the Lord. It was stashed away somewhere in the temple, and they found it. It was like a discovery. It was like, whoa, here is the word of the Lord. Things became so bad in Israel that they had forgotten about the law of the Lord. So where we left off with Hezekiah, the great reforms that he brought about, his son who took over from him, Manasseh, he completely reversed all the good that Hezekiah did. He reinstituted all the idol worship again. And he went even further than that. Manasseh made a wooden statue of Asherah, put it in the temple. And it says here, 2 Kings 21, verse 3 to 6, that he rebuilt the high places which Hezekiah his father had destroyed. He raised up altars for Baal and made a wooden image. That wooden image is the wooden image of Asherah, the wife of Baal. And Ahab, he raised up this wooden image in the same way that Ahab, king of Israel, had done before. The very thing that angered the Lord severely. And Manasseh worshipped all the host of heaven and served them. He also built altars in the house of the Lord, of which the Lord had said, "In Jerusalem I will put my name." And he built altars for all the hosts of heaven in the two courts of the house of the Lord. So he set up these altars for foreign and false gods. He made his son pass through the fire. That was that fire ritual where you walk on coals. That was for the worshipping of Molech. So he was serving other gods. King Manasseh. He practiced soothsaying. He used witchcraft. He consulted spiritists and mediums. He did much evil in the sight of the Lord to provoke him to anger. He did not follow in the footsteps of his father Hezekiah. Deuteronomy 16 verse 21 says, "You shall not plant for yourself a tree as a wooden image near the altar which you built for yourself to the Lord your God. You shall not set up a sacred pillar which the Lord your God hates." This is Deuteronomy 16. God made it perfectly clear that he hates idol worship. And he specifically proclaims that they shall not do this thing. And what did Manasseh do? He put this wooden image of Asherah in the temple, together with the image of Baal. Judges 3 verse 7. So the children of Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord. They forgot the Lord their God and served the Baals and Asherahs. Therefore the anger of the Lord was hot against Israel, and he sold them into the hand of Cushan Rishathaim, king of Mesopotamia. So here in Judges, Israel does this very thing, and the Lord becomes furious. You could only think how the Lord was upset with Israel, for whom he's done so much, turns against him and worship these false idols. In 1 Kings 14, verse 15 and 16, in the days of Jeroboam, it says, For the Lord will strike Israel as a reed is shaken in the water. He will uproot Israel from this good land which he gave to their fathers. He will scatter them beyond the river, because they have made their wooden images, provoking the Lord to anger. So wherever we read about these wooden images, It is the image of Asherah. And he will give Israel up because of the sins of Jeroboam, who sinned and who made Israel sin. The Lord hates idolatry. And the lesson that is for today is a lesson about idolatry. So we can see that the Lord hates idol worship. Jeremiah, now in the time of Josiah, he prophesies the exile of Judah. Now at this point, the northern kingdom is already exiled. They were exiled to a place in northeastern Syria, a place called Halah. So the northern kingdom is in Syria, in Halah, and the southern kingdom is still there. And Jeremiah now prophesies in the days of Josiah, King Josiah. In Jeremiah 17, verse 1 to 4, we read, "The sin of Judah is written with a pen of iron. With the point of a diamond it is engraved on the tablet of their heart, and on the horns of your altars, where their children remember their altars and their wooden images." Again, wooden images speaks of Asherah. "By the green trees on the high hills. O my mountain in the field, I will give as plunder your wealth, all your treasures, and your high places of sin which all your borders within all your borders. And you, even yourself, shall let go of your heritage which I gave you. You let go of your heritage which I gave you, and I will cause you to serve your enemies in the land which you do not know. For you have kindled a fire in my anger which shall burn forever." The Lord is completely displeased with Israel at this time because of the idol worships. Now, in the Hebrew text, it's the Hebrew number 0842 in the Strong's Concordance. Asherah, or Ashtoreth, or Astarte, is a Phoenician goddess, also a Canaanite goddess, which means groves for idol worship. She's also a Babylonian goddess of fortune and happiness, and is a supported consort of Baal, or Baal's wife. Now, the people who destroyed or who cleansed Israel from this idol worship was Gideon. We can read in Judges 6 verse 28. King Asa of Judah in 2 Chronicles 14 verse 3. King Jehoshaphat of Judah in 2 Chronicles 17 and 2 Chronicles 19. Then King Hezekiah, who tore down these wooden images of Asherah in 2 Kings 18, and now in 2 Kings 23 and 2 Chronicles 34 with King Josiah. King Josiah was probably the greatest of the reformers of the kings of Israel, of Judah. And he completely cleansed Israel from all the idolatry, the idol worships, the priests of those false gods. It was prophesied of King Josiah in 1 Kings 13. There was a man of God who prophesied his name and prophesied what he would do. He said, "And behold, a man of God went from Judah to Bethel by the word of the Lord. And Jeroboam stood by the altar to burn incense. Then he cried out against the altar by the word of the Lord, and said, O altar, altar, thus says the Lord, behold, a child, Josiah by name, shall be born of the house of David, and on you he shall sacrifice the priests of the high places who burn incense on you, and men's bones shall be burnt on you." King Josiah um, learned of this prophecy that was prophesied about him. It said here that the child, Josiah, was only 8 years old when he became king of Judah, and he fulfilled this prophecy. He did not let his age determine his influence, but he sought the Lord even from a tender age of 8. He reigned 31 years, and he walked in the ways of his father David, even though his physical father was Manasseh. He received his spiritual genes from David. He did what was right in the sight of the Lord and didn't turn aside to the right or to the left. He didn't stray from the path. His relationship with the scribe Shaphan, opened up his destiny. He was aware of the repair work of the house of the Lord. He was aware that repair was needed. And he showed his concern by requesting that the money gathered from the people to be used by the workmen who performed the repair works of the temple. He showed confidence and trust in his workers and allowed Shaphan the scribe to read the book of the law found by Hilkiah the priest. There was an open channel of communication between the different offices held by the leaders, the scribe, the priest, and the king. Humility showed in the immediate reaction to the words of the law. He tore his clothes, humbled himself, and he wept bitterly. And he asked for the spiritual leaders to inquire to the Lord for him, for the people, and all Judah. He realized how great God's wrath was towards his nations for years of disobedience. He fulfilled the prophecy for his life, spoken by the man of God that we read here in 1 Kings 13. Huldah the prophetess gave him the word of the Lord, and he would not see the calamity that God would bring upon the nation. He would be gathered to his fathers in peace, which means he would die in peace. He had the authority to gather all the elders, the prophets, the priests, and all the people, small and great, to the house of the Lord. And he read all the words of the law in their hearing. And the whole of Judah heard the word of the Lord, the word of the law of the Lord, when Josiah himself read it to the people. So he called for the Passover to be kept. And that's quite significant because Jesus is our Passover. He is the Passover lamb. He is the lamb that was slain so that the wrath of God's anger would pass over his people. And so it's quite significant that King Josiah kept the feast of the Passover. He made a covenant before the Lord to follow the Lord and to keep his commandments and all his testimonies and statutes with all his heart and all his soul, to perform the words of this covenant that were written in the book of the law. Judah took a stand with the king, and he had the loyalty of his followers. He removed from the temple all the articles of Baal, of Asherah, and all the host of heaven, and he burned them outside Jerusalem in the fields of Kidron, or the Kidron Valley. He removed idolatrous priests, and previous kings ordained to burn incense at the high places. He took out the wooden image of Asherah from the house of the Lord, and he burnt it. He tore down the ritual booths of perverted persons in the house of the Lord, and he brought the priests from the cities of Judah. He defiled and broke down the high places. He defiled Topheth in the valley of Ben Hinnom, the Hinnom Valley, and that no one would be able to burn their sons or daughters to the pagan god of Molech. He removed the horses and the chariots from the sun, which the evil kings had set up. He removed the altars on the roof, the chambers of Ahaz, He defiled the high places that Solomon had set up for Ashtoreth or Asherah, the abomination of the Sidonians, for Shemosh, the abomination of the Moabites, for Milcom, the abomination of the uh, people of Ammon. He broke in pieces the sacred pillars and he cut down the wooden images. He filled their places with bones of men, which he killed and burnt, and the bones he scattered. He broke down the altar at Bethel and the high place that Jeroboam raised up, which he caused Israel to sin on. He made so he burned the wooden image. He turned and saw tombs and found out that there were. He found out what they were and burned the bones on the altar according to the words of the Lord, which the man of God had proclaimed. So the man of God said, "You will burn these people, and their bones will be found on the altar." Even burn the bones. He showed respect for the tomb of the man of God. So while he was ripping up the tombs and burning these bodies on the altars, there was one tombstone that read that this was the man of God. And out of respect for his prophecy, he said, "No, leave this guy alone." He not only cleaned up Judah, but he also cleaned up Samaria as well. As we read that he tore down those high places that Jeroboam had set up in Samaria and in Dan. It took away all the shrines of the high places of the cities of Samaria, which the kings of Israel had made to provoke the Lord. He executed all the priests of the high places on the altars, the very altars where these priests burned incense on. Josiah burned them, these priests, on the same altar. And he burned their bones there. He put away all who consulted mediums and spiritists and all the household gods and idols. All the abominations seen in the land of Judah he destroyed. He commanded Judah to keep the Passover, and it was the greatest Passover that was celebrated by the nation of Israel. Josiah performed the whole word, all of the law. He actually did what the Lord prescribed in Deuteronomy, the prescriptions for kings. He was the one who fulfilled all of those things. Josiah was respected by Judah, and he led them into a spiritual reform. He read them the word of the Lord himself, and people followed his example, unlike some kings who did not follow through to bring reforms in the people. Some kings performed some reforms, but not all, not totally. It wasn't a total reform like what Josiah had done. So with regards to the idol worship, so yeah, here was the image of Asherah and of Baal, and that kind of idolatry is easy to spot. But in today's day and age, we don't really have those kind of images, those kind of idolatry. We have a different kind of idolatry. In our day and time, it is a different image that we serve. Well, that the people are the that the world serves, and it is image. People take selfies. People are concerned about their image, what they look like, how they present themselves, um, their status, their stature. So that's so we can see in social media it's all about the people. It's all about themselves. What am I doing? Look at me. Here's my selfie. Here's me at the beach. Here's me at the bar or whatever. And it's about what brands am I wearing? What is the image that I'm wearing? Fashion has become idolatry. Fashion is about image, and each fashion house has a different image that that they create, and people follow those images, and they put it upon themselves. So in a great way, people have become idols. People worship themselves. They're more concerned about the image that they present to other people than anything else. So let the Lord show us where where are we idolatrous? What image are we portraying of ourselves? How important are we? What is this image that we are projecting to the world? Are we different? The Lord said, although we're in the world, we're not from the world. We are different. And we are made in God's image. That is the image that we project and portray. It's His image, not our image, not the image of the world and the fashion houses. It's His image of love, of mercy, compassion, of patience, of kindness, of goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, self control, of perseverance, of character, of goodness. That's the image that we carry. So what's interesting is that I find at this time when I think about the story about the kings is that there was great idolatry, and the Lord was going to pour out His judgment upon Israel, but He needed a vessel to perform that judgment. God always uses somebody to execute His judgment. And so here we have the story of Jonah, sort of a story that seems out of place. But Jonah, in the time of Jeroboam II, this is before the exile of the northern kingdom, God sends him to Nineveh. Now, Nineveh was the capital of Assyria. Assyria was the vessel that God was going to use to execute His judgment upon Israel as a nation. And what does He do? He prepares Assyria. He sends Jonah to them so that they repent. He sends Jonah with a message that he was going to destroy Assyria unless they repent. What do? They call a fast, they call sackcloth and ashes, and they repented, and they actually turned to Elohim. They turned to the living God. A heathen nation. Can you believe it? And this nation became the nation that executed God's judgment on Israel. Now, see how the Lord didn't want the vessel of judgment to be corrupted. He wanted, he cared about them even in that way. He even cared about Israel in the way that they were going to be judged. And so, just after that time, Assyria came against the northern kingdom and against the southern kingdom, and eventually they exiled the northern kingdom to a place called Halah in northeast Syria, and then so then the southern kingdom was still there, but God had then used Assyria to judge the northern kingdom. Now, because of Manasseh and all the evil that is done, it was so great that the good that Josiah did was not enough to avert the anger of the Lord against Judah. So after the death of King Josiah, only 22 years after his death, the Babylonian Empire took over from the Assyrian Empire, and they exiled Judah to Babylon. So it is a lesson of idolatry. Israel as a nation was exiled because of their idolatry, which the Lord hates. And let it be a lesson for us to rid our lives from idolatry. All right, and then to wrap this up, after King Josiah, his son reigned, which was Jehoahaz. Jehoahaz was only 23 years old when he became king. He reigned for only 3 months, short period of time. He was imprisoned by Pharaoh Necho, and he died in Egypt. Jehoiakim took over from Jehoahaz. He was made king by Pharaoh Necho, and he was the brother of Jehoahaz. He was made the Judah was made a vassal of King Nebuchadnezzar. In other words, he was a subsidiary, a subordinate province of Babylon. He did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. And so after him came Jehoiakim. He was 18 when he became king. He did evil in the sight of the Lord. And he was exiled to Babylon. He was sensible enough to agree to be exiled, and they made Zedekiah king after him. Zedekiah was 21 years old when he became king. He reigned for 11 years. He did evil in the sight of the Lord, and as a result, the words of the prophet Jeremiah came to pass, and Judah was carried away, exiled to Babylon. That is the end of the book of Kings. Yeah. I think that's it. And for the full-time students, I'll give you some notes and help prepare you for the exam. All right. God bless you.